So, this has taken me a long time to do this third part in the Partscaster series. If you remember a few months back, I was relicking this body and telling you about this guitar. And if you're new to the channel, this is the Pink Guitar Project, which is a charity project I started to raise money for breast cancer now, which is a research charity here in the UK. And myself and a bunch of other people have been making pink gear to raffle off. We've done a few raffles already. We've had the likes of Marshall amps, we had a Fender guitar, we've had pedals from Cherryatone, and we had a brown protein in pink, and there's lots more stuff to come through this year. So in the last video I relicked this and I really enjoyed that, and I got some good feedback from you guys who liked what I've done, and thanks for that. I want to tell you why this has taken a couple of months to get from that point to this point. And also, for the first time, we're going to hear this guitar. I'm going to tell you what pickups are in here, and I'm really excited about that. I've played it for all of 30 seconds to make sure it works. I haven't really played it, so we're going to hear that. On top of that, I'm going to pick the name in a minute of the 7,500 sub winner of the protein pedal I've got here. This was my own personal protein pedal. I really love this pedal. I'll probably get another one, to be honest with you. So I'll announce that shortly. But yeah, let's see a few of the obstacles that got in my way first, and why this took me a few months to get from start to finish. Alright, it's in, and pretty happy with that as my first go. Obviously I don't know if it actually works, but we'll find that out next week. Now let's do some relicking with this new wax that I've got. So at this point, to be honest with you, it had gone pretty well. I had done the electrics and they'd been a lot smoother than I thought, taken about an hour from start to finish, and I was sort of teaching myself how to do it as I went along, and putting that relicking wax on seemed to give a bit of a nice colour underneath the paint there. So I thought I was on the finishing straight, and that was only a couple of days after the last video. So as you can imagine, there were a few things that happened after that made me realise how much work goes into the sort of setup and the finishing and the finessing of a guitar. Now obviously, if you made a Partscaster yourself, you may have had the same experience. The first one, there's a lot of learning to do. So I'm going to show you what few bits actually went wrong, and also talk a little bit about setup. One thing I can say is I'd hate to be doing this on a non-relict guitar. This is not fun, this bit. If you've got a pristine guitar, you're going to be terrified. Okay, this board is a little bit light, so I'm just going to put some of this Monty stuff that I've used on the body. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so these tuning ferrule thingies are a weird imperial size, for which I have actually got this drill. They just don't want to fit very easily, so it takes a few minutes per one. This is the sort of thing where if you wanted to do this at home with no sort of prior preparation, There's lots of little tools that can make your job easier, and without which you might start to feel a little bit exasperated. So having this right imperial size, I can't even tell you anymore what size it is. I'd have to look it up online. Okay, I keep chickening out on marking out these tuners. It's always dangerous to do something new near the end of the day. So instead, I'm going to leave that for tomorrow. I've got an idea what I want to do. I need to get a Sharpie marker, mark each one, indent it, then drill it, and just don't do it near, evening time. So I'm going to take all these out. Okay, so here's where the first thing really went wrong on this project. It looks like I'm happily sort of waxing up these screws to put in the holes, because especially with little screws, you want to give them some sort of lubrication so that when you take them out in future it's easy. And yeah, it looks all hunky-dory, but actually what had happened the day before, and I wasn't sure if I was going to show you this, but I've decided to, was I'd reached into my drill sort of case and taken out the 2mm drill to drill these little tuner holes, but I'd actually put the 2.5mm drill bit in the wrong place. So I drilled them all and then put the tuners in, and they were really wobbly in the screws. Well, you could just pull them out. So I had a bit of a panic, a miniature tantrum, and then realized, these things happen. How do I fix it? And so I went ahead and put sort of toothpicks, glued them in with wood glue into the hole and re-drilled them. And in the end, it's actually a really simple thing to do. It doesn't take that long, and it fixes it well. And in fact, if you need to change the screw hole sizes in something like this because you're changing the tuners, or you're going from imperial to metric or something, you can do this. And in fact, later in the build, in a couple of minutes, you'll see when it came to doing the bridge, there was a similar situation I'll explain at the time. So next comes one of the most important, crucial parts of a guitar build, and that is doing the fretwork, basically the leveling, the crowning and the polishing. Because, despite everything else that you do when making a guitar, the bit that the person feels the most is their left hand, the carve on the back of the neck, which I've obviously not done for this guitar, but then how the strings move, how they feel, how they bend, the action. And to get a good action, you want to have really level frets, you need to get the right relief. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and I think ultimately for a professional, for a great guitar builder, it's a part of the job they can make their signature, and it probably takes them, I don't know, a couple of hours, but for me it took a little bit longer. It's probably the second time I've done this, and definitely nowhere near good at it in many ways. I can get them level, my crowning's okay, but it's not going to be beautiful, rounded ended frets just yet. There's something to work on, but it's something that I will hopefully take some time and get some good skills in eventually. So when it came to this guitar, it didn't need a huge amount of leveling. This is a neck bought from All Parts. It's licensed by Fender. The work is pretty decent. The neck itself, the shape feels nice. The frets are a little bit smaller than I might have put in myself. So that's something you can change on these things if you take the time to get someone else to do it perhaps for you. But these are sort of medium frets, not jumbo. And in the end, this part of the job wasn't too bad, but we'll come back to exactly how the setup went in a second. So once you've got the frets nice and leveled and you've crowned them, then it's time to really set this guitar up. And the first step is really just getting a nut that fits in the slot. So I'm using one of these Tusk nuts, which is already slotted, rather than making my own. So you, depending on the slot that's in the neck already, you're just going to have to sand for width. And then I compared it to some of my current, my own guitars, and got down to a reasonable height as well, sanded off some of the height so that the action wouldn't be too high. If your action's too high, then basically at the first fret you're going to get intonation issues, or it's going to go too sharp. So I worked on that for a bit, and then it was time to string up the guitar and finally see if this thing would make a sound. This is why I ran into some issues though, although there's not a lot of it on film, and I'm just going to explain what happened. I got the strings on and there was a lot of choking, and I wasn't then sure what the right course of action was. If I bent it at the 15th fret, for example, on the G string or the B string, it would just completely choke out. So I knew there was an issue either with the leveling of the frets or just the action itself, and that the saddles on the bridge needed work. But on top of that, the top E string was hanging, was almost at the edge of the fretboard, and I just couldn't work out why. So this is where the Boatyard workshop came into play. I was looking around for someone to help me, and I came across, just literally 2 miles from my house, and I can't believe I didn't know this existed, the Boatyard workshop, where if you've watched recent videos, I've actually been going there a lot, and I ended up buying one of the guitars that David, the owner of the workshop, made, a Telecaster, and I'm going there making other guitars now. But I went along there and he was able to measure everything up, and we discovered that the body, we discovered basically that I needed different, what's the right word? String spacing. That's the one. So I was unaware of the fact that the body I'd bought and the neck together, I just needed to get the more modern spacing, I think. It's difficult to remember everything that happened now. Basically, bridges come in 2 spacings, and when you buy parts to make a Partscaster, just ask them first which spacing you should have. I bought a vintage style Goto bridge, and then ended up having to change that for a more modern style one with different spacing. But as soon as we did that, the E string sat perfectly normally where it should be. So it's only a tiny difference. You wouldn't necessarily feel the difference in your hand. You may do, it depends how sensitive you are to that, but just meant that I wasn't able to put on the vintage style bridge that I love with the relicking. So overall, it's a learning experience for me that, you really want to start by getting all the right parts first, and they're just nuances in sizes and shapes and everything. But it wasn't a huge big deal. The only issue was that I'd already drilled the holes for the bridge that I'd bought, and then annoyingly had to go and dowel those. What was cool though, at the Boatyard workshop, David has a small CNC machine, and we were able to CNC out the dowels to the exact size of the holes that I drilled in the guitar. And then the reason this took also so long was this happened just a couple of weeks before Christmas. We stuck the dowels in, and then I wasn't back there for a month until after Christmas. But that was that, really. At that point, I set about just having one last look at the frets, making sure they were level, using a file connected to a fret rocker so that you can actually do tiny little bits of filing to any parts that aren't exactly right. And overall just spent a good 45 minutes or so getting the right relief in. And there are loads of videos on YouTube that can help you with this that I found helpful as well. There's no point me telling you because I'm a beginner, and therefore I was really just learning as I went along. But once you've got the relief set how you like, you can then get the saddles of your bridge to the right radius. So you might have to buy something that gives you the radius, and then you can get the saddles right and the action how you want it. And it just takes a bit of back and forth and figuring it out, and then also playing it for an hour or two. Whilst I've been recording this, I noticed just when I first started that there was a little bit of a gritty feeling on one of the frets when I was bending the B string. But after about half an hour of mucking about and playing, it had gone. So it had obviously just been a tiny little thing that I could feel under the strings, and that's gone now. So then, anyway, at that point, I had sanded and polished the frets as well. So sanded them to a really fine grit. I think it was, I want to say 1600, and then polished using steel wool, really fine steel wool. You can go as far as you want. You can use buffing wheels, all sorts. So there we go. There was a lot of learning. I'm really glad I've done it. I'm going to be doing more of these. I've actually got a few bodies that I've had painted, which I'm going to be relicking and then offering up for sale, either just as bodies or working with whoever wants it to make a Partscaster for them, where either I make the neck or buy the neck in as they wish. So if that's something you're interested in, you can contact me. There's an email address in the description. And we're going to hear this guitar now. I'm really excited. So these pickups were very kindly donated by Stuart from Sunbear Pickups, and they're a new set that he's made called 5969. And what that means is the neck pickup has grey bottom to the bobbin, which is the 69 style. It means it uses a different type of wire and just a different overall construction of, or the scattering of the wind and how the resistance and all of those things, the magnets and whatnot. It's really cool. So it has that sort of late 60s vibe to it. And then these two are 59, so more 50s in style, which I think works really well. And just gives a very vintage character to the whole thing, but just slightly different than you'd expect. And I noticed recently that Ainsley Lister, friend of mine, friend of Stuart's, and great blues guitarist, has put a set in his guitar and says, in his custom shop Strat, and says it's the best that guitar's ever sounded. And yeah, they do sound really great. Today, I'm not doing a very in-depth review. We're going to hear the guitar clean through the classic reverb signature in a second. We're also going to hear it using this Germanium treble booster by Long Island Sounds, who very kindly made this for us, put the Pink Guitar Project logo on there, and made an awesome looking pedal with amazing parts. Now, I'm not hugely knowledgeable of these things. I heard the word mallard. I heard that there's some cool stuff in here. At some point on Instagram, I'll put a minute's video showing you the inside and what's in there, and ask Long Island Sounds to comment, because this is going to be in the raffle. I'll announce the raffle start date really soon, but for £5 a ticket, you'll be able to have a chance to win this Partscaster and the pedal together. And then the third clip will also have the poly effects set like this. That's a silicon diode, and then with the B side as well, some gain, some volume. Let's hear what it sounds like. So I think clean, that sounded really nice. It was nice to play. The pickups have got some, you get a nice dynamic feeling to them. They're quite supple, they're not brittle, and you get a lot of sort of feedback as you're playing, to the dynamics that you're using. Touch sensitive, that's the word. So with that treble booster on, I think there's a really cool sort of vintage feel to it. I've been using this booster with other guitars as well, and it gives that sort of 60s fuzz sound. It's not like a full-on fuzz pedal, just gives you a flavor, and it works really well with other pedals. And I like the fact that it's not just battery operated, you can stick your 9-volt cable in as well. So as you expect with the Poly FX pedal, all just held together really well. You get such a defined character between the pickups. It's very stratty sounding, which is something I really like. 50 strats are not as stratty sounding in inverted commas as you expect. They're not as scooped. But I find with this 69 here, it gives more of that stratty character that people might be after. So I think that's a really cool idea from Stuart to have done this set. Well, the last thing to do is finally to announce the winner of the white protein pedal. Been doing this giveaway for quite a few months. I'm quite excited. We've got a huge box of names now. Printed off all the new ones. You had to just subscribe and comment, and I went back through all the comments. And here we go. The winner is Mino. Can we get, why can't I focus on it? The winner is Mino Palucci. So congrats, Mino. All you have to do is email the email address in the description, and we'll have a chat, and I'll get your address, and I'll be sending this white protein pedal over to you. So congratulations. As to the raffle for this Pink Partscaster and the Long Island Sounds Germanium treble booster, I'm going to announce that soon. But follow the Pink Guitar Project on Instagram, and you'll know first. I'll also let you know on the channel. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this sort of 3-part Partscaster build. And I'll be doing more guitar build stuff here and there in future. So if you like that sort of thing, subscribe to the channel. And I'll be announcing my 10,000 sub giveaway. Probably not straight away. I'll give it a couple of months, and then we'll go and try and aim for that 10K maybe this year. So anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time. Cheers.